So if you're a longtime Yu-Gi-Oh watcher, you might have noticed a growing trend in the Yugitube content sphere. There's not that much content about modern Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. By that, I mean there's a lot less videos of deck profiles, opening new packs, set breakdowns, meta discussions, and more importantly, actual modern duels. These kind of videos pretty much defined the early days of Yugitube, but somewhere along the way, things change. Your favorite big Yu-Gi-Oh creators might be playing Yu-Gi-Oh still, sure, but it's not the advanced format. No, chances are they're doing some kind of fun challenge duel, spin the wheel, Masochist, Master Chef, cube draft, whatever. These are all really entertaining videos, but it does beg the question, why doesn't anyone want to watch the actual standard game being played anymore? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Why is it happening? When exactly did it start? Could it ever change? Taking a trip down memory lane, old Yugitube back in the late 2000s and early 2010s used to be all about talking about the game and showcasing it in some way. As a Yugituber from that time period myself, it was basically considered standard practice to make a video analyzing newest upcoming set, telling people what cards to buy, what decks to watch out for. The work. You also had to make a box opening video for the set the moment it dropped. The sooner the better, since the early bird got the worms in terms of views. Making deck profiles of whatever the new interesting decks were, giving an updated deck profile of whatever decks you were most known for playing. If you were at an event, you'd want a profile of the first place winner and as many of the topping decks as you could get. Maybe record a match between the new top tier decks of a format fighting at full power. And of course, all the other tertiary stuff like ban list predictions, tier lists, combo guides, meta discussions, the works. And everybody was doing all this stuff all the way down the ladder, from your biggest channels to the smallest. That was basically the Yugitube playbook in a nutshell. But then, everything changed when Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel attacked. Yeah, we gotta address the elephant in the room. This game alone marked a paradigm shift in how Yu-Gi-Oh! Content was created and consumed. It's not the only reason that we're going to discuss in this video, but it's definitely the biggest. Suddenly there was an official way of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Online and recording it. Dueling Book and YGO Pro and stuff had existed for ages, but something about the production value and just the hype made it way more enticing to play Master Duel. Anybody could try it out, and videos about it immediately got a lot more attention. Lots of new faces entered the scene, everybody was rushing to play their favorite decks, especially anime ones like Dark Magician or Stardust Dragon, and you suddenly had huge collabs and new eyes in the game. And to be clear, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself got a lot of a mainstream moment and some mainstream fame, and that's great. Thing is though, it also indirectly highlighted some of the issues with the real-life paper card game, namely that it's kind of boring, and not exactly in the way that you might expect. First of all, there are some logistics issues. Recording in-person Yu-Gi-Oh! Content is kind of hard actually. Take it from me, a channel that's been doing it for years. Setting up an entire top-down camera for duels and face cams and microphones and editing in card images, adding life points, sound effects, the whole thing. It's time consuming, and that's all after going to the trouble of acquiring the cards or the products themselves for the video. And comparatively, recording Master Duel footage is super easy. You play it on your computer and record your screen and webcam. Pretty much got all the exciting sounds and visuals done for you automatically. And to its credit, this is a good thing. I've sung the praises of Master Duel's presentation since the day it came out. The consequence though is that it kind of overshadows the paper card game. Still, that's only one piece of the equation. The next one I'd say is the general lack of appeal of actually watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Get played. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already a niche game to begin with, but it's also one that just doesn't exactly lend itself well to entertainment. At least not in the modern sense. Sure, it might sound interesting to see two meta decks play against each other in a video until you realize that match is probably a lot of very one-sided duels. One player takes their turn, they combo for a long time, they lock the opponent out of the game, they switch for game two, and the same thing kind of just happens again on the other side, and it's kind of it. That's the duel. I'm oversimplifying a bit, and trust me, I know there's real nuance to playing modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, but in the context of making an entertaining video for YouTube, yeah, like most people kind of don't really care about that. Sure, people might tune into the finals of a YCS stream to watch a pair of meta decks play each other, but that's only really because of the high stakes and the narrative that comes with it. Be honest, would you really tune in to watch Joe Blow and Average Andy play Yummy versus Draco Tail at locals for the umpteenth time? In fact, this even applies to Master Duel too. It's a well-known fact that Master Duel's metagame is just as, if not more, polarizing than the TCG, so nobody's really tuning in for your bog standard ranked ladder climb. The best you'll get is people tuning in to watch their favorite competitive streamer deprive themselves of food and sleep in the Duelist Cup every few months, sick bastards. Again, take it from me. We tried to upload duels with our real-life modern paper decks, and they almost always go over badly with a casual crowd. People leave comments complaining about how one player's turn just lasted forever. And that's not even with meta decks either. Even an anime-themed duel with modern decks will kind of run into the same problem. For instance, take Stardust Dragon versus Red Dragon Archfiend. Sounds like a really fun time, right? Yusei versus Jack, two iconic anime rivals duking it out. But the reality's not so pretty. The Yusei deck goes first and makes junk speeder, and then it's off to the races, comboing for an obscenely long time and ending on a board of Cosmic Blazer Dragons and Stardust Ciphers and whatever else, and now we've got a problem. The Jack deck takes its turn and tries to start by summoning Soul Resonator or using Crimson Gaia, and the Stardust Eye negates it. Like, that's what they're supposed to do. Maybe the Jack deck has a follow-up play, okay, that gets negated too. And that's kind of it. A one-sided game where Deck A did everything and Deck B did nothing. Sure, we can choose to suspend disbelief and try to let the Jack deck do its plays without getting interrupted, but then what's the point of the Stardust monster's effects, right? And that's before even mentioning all the comments you'll get about misplays and why didn't you negate this or that card? It's kind of a lose-lose situation. And sadly, that sort of applies to most modern anime decks these days. Heroes combo forever, Yubel combos forever, Raid Raptors make a pair of giant unaffected boss monsters. It's unfortunately just the nature of Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, and it also lends that much more appeal to the idea of playing some sort of limited power format instead. Most people want to see a back and forth game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And the only real way to get that is by imposing some kind of heavy restrictions in the cards and strategies you can use. It makes the idea of a draft or some old school format or even just a silly, highly restrictive spin the wheel deck with a prompt that much more enticing. You get a more honest game and still with the fun personalities and the excitement of building around a memorable card or strategy. All right, next we gotta talk about the product problem. There's no sugarcoating it. Yu-Gi-Oh! Packs kinda suck these days. Go look at your local game store, if it even still stocks Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, and tell me there aren't packs of Maze of whatever, Battles of whatever, just sitting there collecting dust. People just don't really want to watch pack openings, plain and simple. That even applies to most new mainline sets. One look at the price of a box on TCG Player kind of tells the story right there. Pull rates aren't great, there's maybe one or two cards worth the price of the box, and most cards are pack filler. And you kind of already know what's good and what's bad in the set, so there's just not a lot of mystery or magic to be had. That said, this isn't all bad. People definitely still tune in for openings around a good new structure deck like Blue Eyes, Branded, or those legendary 5Ds decks. And they're usually pretty good entry products and they bridge the sort of gap between casuals and competitive. And of course, people like watching old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff get open. Retro packs, that new legendary collection Kaiba, they go fast in my local Walmart, even if Doom of Dimensions is still rotting on store shelves. We'll circle back to this problem in a bit when we talk about some potential solutions. Okay, last major reason why people aren't watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a bit more nuanced. There's been a shift in the way that the hardcore competitive game gets shared and talked about these days. Like I said before, this used to be pretty straightforward. People uploaded deck profiles of topping lists from YCS events, regionals, even their own local tournaments. There are also lots of guides for combos, how to side deck, tier lists, the whole thing. And to be fair, that's still happening today. But the big difference I've seen now is the advent of what I'll call outsourcing. You've probably seen it before. These social media pages that basically take deck lists that topped events and turn them into a single image. Nice and easy to see the whole thing and share it around in your group chats with friends. So with that, there's a lot less reason to actually go and watch a full video. Sure, some players will want to hear about the pilot's decision-making for certain card choices, but for the average player, they're far more interested in just seeing the deck list so they can try it out themselves. Even if they were to watch the full deck profile, they might just skip around to kind of see through the high points and then move on. Oh, and as a bit of quick YouTuber inside baseball, this kind of thing really hurts a video's performance. Ideally, you want the viewer to watch the video through to the end, or at least as much of it as possible, and that's just not going to happen if they're jumping around and dipping out. This also applies to pack openings, where people just kind of want to skip to the end to see good pulls. Again, not blaming them, but just saying that's kind of how it plays out. Speaking of outsourcing, you might have also noticed that a lot more Yu-Gi-Oh! Resources are starting to be made for sites like MetaFi. These in-depth combo guides and master classes on learning decks and matchups, often made by the top players in the game right now. But that catch, of course, is that they're hidden behind a paywall and not just for the everyman to see. To be clear, it makes sense for them to try and monetize their skill and accolades in the game. It's not exactly like Yu-Gi-Oh! Pricing is paying the bills. As for whether or not it's a good or bad thing, I won't tell you how to spend your money, but I will just say each one of them is also one less piece of competitive content on YouTube, so take that as you will. And last quick note on this point, but you might remember a lot of channels used to make videos talking about OCG card reveals. Nowadays, there's sites like Yu-Gi-Oh! News and Ready for Duel that just translate those and turn them into these nice, neat, easily consumable pictures. Why watch a full video on the card when you can just share the translated picture in your local group chat and just talk about it there instead? Oh, and full disclosure, by the way, these pages are doing amazing work for the community. I'd say it's an objective improvement to the way that card news gets shared and discussed. I'm just saying it's one more sort of cog in that paradigm shift away from talking about the card game on YouTube. Okay, enough doom and gloom. How do we fix it? I'll be honest, I don't have all the answers. I seriously have thoughts, but at the end of the day, a lot of this just comes down to two things. Viewer tastes and preferences, which are wildly unpredictable, and of course, whatever decisions Konami makes with the game as a whole. As for the Master Duel thing, fundamentally, it'll always be the ideal way to record a duel, and that's okay. I honestly wouldn't expect anybody to want to record paper Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. Like I said, it's hard. And yet, there are people who are. Outside of yours truly, of course. I saw that Distant Coder recently set up an entire studio dedicated to streaming and recording modern paper Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels like an actual YCS feature match would be, and I gotta say it looks damn good. Plus, he invites a rotating door of really interesting guests with real tournament accolades. They're done live, but he also uploads the VODs to YouTube, and if you want even more of that, there's also my boy Tombox over at MST TV. He's kind of the OG of emulating the feature match table. So go show both of those channels some love if you're craving that sort of thing. I've also seen a lot of competitive players like Pac actually live stream their locals tournament runs on Twitch, which is a pretty new thing. You're getting to basically watch how a top-level player approaches the game every week against a variety of opponents, and I think that's really valuable for keeping up with the ever-shifting nature of the metagame at the ground level. As for products, well, that's a tough one right now. I mean, there are still those Konami-sponsored channels that do early box opening videos, and they're usually pretty popular. People want to see what's in the new set, especially rarities and if there's any world premiere archetypes. But outside of that, I think that those new overframe cards that they announced for next year look really promising. We don't have many details yet, but they're basically like full arts, which Yu-Gi-Oh's never had before outside of Rush Duel, and that was only in Japan. They're even supposed to be doing some serialized copies of the cards too. Sounds interesting. I think this is huge for the collector side of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it might inject a lot more interest in just buying and opening sealed product. Especially watching your favorite creators crack loads and loads of boxes in search of a super elusive serialized card. We all remember Ruxin searching for Dragon Master Magia, so just imagine more of that. And yes, I've seen your comments. I know that the real solution would be bringing back the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Pack opening series on YouTube, Larry in the Hole. But alas, Larry's a family man now, so that's a bit complicated. But keep your eyes peeled, it might show up soon, stars align. Last major thing is the introduction of Genesis format. I feel like this is actually a potential game changer. You guys probably already know the gist, but in case you don't, it's the new format where every card in the game is legal, outside of link monsters and pendulums, but all the best cards have a point value attached to them. Your deck can't exceed a certain point threshold, so it restricts deck building and makes for a much more interesting environment where a lot of less popular strategies are suddenly way more viable. It's basically a love letter to the mid-core players who've largely been neglected in Yu-Gi-Oh! For the past few years. So far, it's attracted a lot of interest from the casual and competitive crowds, and all the talk has even reached some of my lapsed Yu-Gi-Oh! Friends who are asking me about it. There's a lot of content being made around it, and Konami seems pretty committed to the format. They're making regular status updates about it, adjusting point values to keep things fresh, and they've even committed to an entire dedicated YCS event just for Genesis format. So this could totally be the next big thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and I think that'd be a pretty cool thing to see. And speaking of Konami, I can't be the only one who feels like there's been a bit of a vibe shift from them, right? Like, Genesis format itself is already huge, but they've also been steadily improving prize support at YCS events, announcing the overframe cards, dropping emergency ban lists. There's certainly something in the water, and it's kind of got me hopeful. After all, any new interest in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game is a win for Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creation too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG content isn't exactly in a great place for a bunch of reasons, but I don't think it's outright cooked. There's some really bright spots in the darkness, and even more promising things around the corner. Oh yeah, and I should probably mention this too before anyone comes after me for it. I'm well aware that there are still channels putting in great work at like making Yu-Gi-Oh content, and they don't all get enough credit for it. So the last thing I want is for this video to come across as me undermining their efforts. With that said, if you made it this far, I want to hear from you guys. What kind of modern Yu-Gi-Oh content do you find yourself consuming the most, and why? What sort of things would you want to see more in the space in general? We can certainly continue this conversation below in the comments. All right, thumbs if you liked it, sub if you loved it, and I'll see you guys around. Fast turn.